everybody, Michael here. It's finally that time of year again, huh? Time to celebrate Saori's birthday once more. After the fiasco of last year's celebration and all that came with it, I started brainstorming things I could possibly do for next year's celebration that was both simple, memorable, and really showed just how much I appreciate her as a character. So, I decided to rewatch last year's project, und Panzer, but only when Saori's on screen, to find any semblance of an idea, with one coming to me very early on. Specifically, in episode 2 of the anime, where Miho lets everyone else come over to her apartment to have dinner together. It's a very light-hearted scene where we see different aspects of each character and how they interact with each other, with Saori taking up the mantle as the one to bring everyone together to make a nice meal that everyone can enjoy. One particular line from this scene caught me, as Saori mentions that the meat and potato stew she makes is perfect for getting guys, and it got me thinking, is it really that good? I mean, it looks really good, I know she's a good cook. What if I tried to make it? And that's where my idea came into fruition. Of course, I know nothing about cooking and have no experience outside of some fringe scenarios, so I knew I was going to need some help. I took a screenshot of the meal that she prepared and I sent it to a good friend of mine who lives in Japan, Shun. Shun is a super nice guy and someone I look up to. Much like how I'm the Saori guy or Saori's husband, Shun is the Noriko guy or Noriko's husband. He's done a lot of really cool things for her birthday and for her in general in the past, making things like custom shirts and hoodies, and even the super cool cake last year that I still think looks amazing. I asked him if he knew what meal specifically she had made, and he not only responded with what it was, but 2 sources for how to make it as well, which was a big help. As you can tell from the dates on these messages, I had this planned for quite a while, almost 8 months ahead of time, and am only now just getting around to doing it. This is also why there are Japanese subtitles on this video, so that he, along with any other Japanese follower of his or mine, can watch it as well to celebrate. So I got myself ready, and after asking my mom, who was a big help in this project, if she'd help, we headed out to get the ingredients necessary to make this nikujaga stew. For some reason, I also decided to record how I was feeling before I went out to get these ingredients, and my energy was pretty high at the time, so I'll drop that here.
Alright, so it is 1 week until Saori's birthday, 2024, and I'm gonna go ahead and head to the store and just grab the ingredients to make the stew. We'll see how it goes.
With a newfound resolve, we went in and everything went pretty smooth at first, grabbing the potatoes and carrots without a problem and even getting some beef cuts made for stews, so everything was looking up. But that's where our luck ran out. For those unaware, I live in the South in the US, so coming by konjac noodles is something I knew would be the biggest ingredient, up in the air of whether I'd find it or not. I went to the Asian ingredient aisle and unfortunately couldn't find it anywhere. My mom, staying optimistic, said she had an idea for a substitute that may work for it, and this is something I'll get back to later when I actually show us making the stew. However, we picked right back up where we left off, grabbing everything else that we needed without too much of a problem, being the onions and the soy sauce. Later that day, when dinner time came, it was finally time to cook the stew. I wanted to record as much of the process as I could, but the only recording device I had that wasn't my phone like in the previous clip was my camcorder that I've had for years, so I made do with what I had. This did lead into awkward moments where I wanted to help with certain things while making it, but I also wanted to record the process for others to see in case they wanted to make it too. In that same vein, I mentioned earlier that I'm not too versed on cooking and I didn't want to burn myself on the stove making it, so my mom took over for those portions. Again, big thanks to her for helping, I couldn't have done it without her. So, to finally get into the process of making it, we first peeled the onions, carrots, and potatoes and cut them into chunks, or roughly thirds. Depending on how you like your portions, you can cut them into smaller pieces if it'd be easier. This is one of the very few processes that I managed to actually do with her recording instead, and I almost comically reenacted the moment where Hana cuts her finger while peeling the potatoes. Next, we put some cooking oil into our pan and started to sear the beef cuts until they were midway cooked through. We don't want to cook them entirely because we'll be putting them back into our pan later on. This is also where we come back to the konjac noodles. Like aforementioned, we couldn't find them anywhere, so with my mom's suggestion, we substituted them for angel hair spaghetti. I know I'm going to be making both the Japanese and Italian people mad watching this, but it was the best we could do with what we had. They're thin enough to be like the konjac noodles, and although they're not exactly the right size for the stew, they'll be able to absorb the sauces and juices much like the konjac noodles will. This also meant that we needed to pre-cook them so that they're the consistency of those noodles, so while searing our beef cuts, we'll be cooking that in a separate bowl. Once the beef cuts are brown on mostly all sides, we remove them and put them into a separate bowl. Then, we place all of our vegetables into the pan and begin to sear them as well, adding in the sugar, extra water, and soy sauce before adding our cooked noodles on top. Finally, we add the beef cuts from earlier on top of the noodles, stirring them and letting it sit for 20 minutes with a lid on top. Finally though, after 8 months of preparing, it was finally time to see just how good this prophetical stew would be. It certainly smelled great when we removed the lid from the top of it, and I was pretty hopeful that despite not having the right noodles for the stew, that it still tastes great. So, how did it turn out? It was okay. In retrospect, I definitely hyped myself up a little too much for what the meal was. I'm not quite sure why I thought it'd be some grand 5-star meal when in actuality it's just a simple common dinner made from vegetables and meat. I guess the thought of it being something Saori would eat would make it seem better, and my love for her definitely swayed me to make it in the first place. The noodles definitely played a big part in the overall taste, and not in the way that you would expect considering how I've been talking about them. They actually held the soy sauce well, and it was the only part of the dish to do so, actually. Even though we added way more than what the recipe called for, most of it had cooked itself out by the time we ate it, to the point where I even needed to go back and directly add more to my plate to get all that flavor in it. Everything else tasted how you'd expect it to be on their own, which was disappointing, but it was still a very good meal nonetheless. All in all, I enjoyed it and I thought it was a great experience, but I just know that if Saori saw it and that she tried it, she'd tell me that it was good and then in the nicest way possible tell me to leave the cooking to her from now on. I hope everyone enjoyed watching me stumble through this as my way of celebrating her birthday this year, and I once again want to give a big thanks to Shun for helping me find a way to make it. I'll leave the links he left me in the description in case you also want to see how to make it, and most likely better than how I made it. I also want to take the time to say thank you to everyone who supported me in these last couple of years. I have thoroughly enjoyed becoming a part of the Girls and Panzer community, especially with my fixation on my favorite character Saori, and couldn't have done it without you guys. The amount of encouraging comments I've gotten has definitely helped me solidify Girls and Panzer as my favorite series ever, and it's definitely become a big part of my life. It's certainly strange to be able to say that I've been a fan of it for almost a fourth of my life now, and having fan art drawn of me with her by others is certainly amazing to see. I already have ideas for my next Saori project, but that'll have to wait for a while as I still have loads of other projects I need to work on. Once again, I thank you all for watching. Happy birthday to Saori, and I'll see you guys next time.